On the cross, Jesus is united to the many mothers and fathers who suffer as they see their children become victims of drug-induced euphoria. Today's generation is too focused on how they present themselves to others. They'll almost try anything to find the approval of their peers. And in this day and age, that may mean exposing themselves to the harmful and crippling effects of drugs.
As young people, many of us have very little knowledge about the true fact that drugs have on our mind and our body. Much of our knowledge only comes from commercials like this.
Oh, what's up, gangsta?
Hey man, what are you doing after school today?
Nothing. Why?
You want to go smoke grass with me in the parking lot?
Nah, man, I mowed my lawn yesterday.
What? No, I mean smoke pot.
Oh, yeah.
Sweet.
13% of people who start smoking pot as teenagers end up becoming dependent on it as adults. It also lowers your IQ by up to 8 points. Don't be like these kids here. Stay drug-free.
Even though these ads may have helped to ward some kids off, some kids just won't ignore the warnings.
But these warnings aren't false. There have been years and years of research that prove the harmful effects behind drugs. Let's start from the beginning.
Drugs have been used in the United States since the mid-1800s as an influx of Chinese immigrants brought opium smoking to the American mainland. Decades later, in 1925, opium dens sprawled across New York City and resulted in 200,000 heroin addicts. Years later, in the 1930s and 40s, marijuana became used more prevalently for recreational use. Cocaine has been a prevalent drug for centuries throughout the world, but mainly in South America where it is grown. Primarily, Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru produce drugs that are smuggled through Mexico and the Caribbean and then into the United States where they are sold. The biggest issue we face in the modern day is illegal trafficking and drug cartels, which lead to countless drug-related crimes and has left thousands of innocent people dead.
Drug abuse, trafficking, and a reaction against it has claimed many lives. The ongoing Mexican drug war, fought between Mexico, the Sinaloa cartel, Los Zetas, and co-belligerents, have claimed the lives of tens of thousands each year since President Felipe Calderon declared the war in 2006. By the time Calderon's term ended in 2012, 60,000 people died and 27,000 were declared missing, including citizens caught in the cartel's path of destruction. In America, illegal drugs led to mass incarceration and millions of arrests, far more than any other crime combined.
As you can see, drugs can affect your life in many ways, spiritually, mentally, physically, and even legally. Well, we got the chance to sit down with someone who has seen some of these first-hand experiences, and we got to pick his brain on what he thinks about them.
My name is Marco Farrell, and I'm an undercover police officer.
And so, what your experience with drugs? How have you seen it affect people's lives personally?
Drugs does nothing more than tear apart a person's life. It may start off innocently, thinking I'm just going to try it because of peer pressure or whatever it may be going on in their lives, but it always ends up the same way with an addiction. Next thing you know, instead of going to work or going to school, playing sports, they're just living for that next high. They're doing whatever they can do to live that next high, which ultimately tears apart their personal lives.
And then, how have drugs negatively impacted the community as a whole?
The community, once you turn to drugs, it's a slippery slope. You're always looking for that next high, but to get that next high, you need the money. And if you're addicted to drugs, chances are you're not going to work anymore, or you're not going to school. So what's your alternative to get money? You start breaking into people's homes. Typically, you'll start with breaking into people's cars, because that's an easy way to get money. Most people leave their cars unlocked. They'll leave valuables, your cell phones in a car, money in a car. And if they're not getting what they need from there, they're going to start breaking into homes. They're going to start robbing stores, robbing the average citizen walking down the street just to get money so they can get high. All of that affects the communities that we live in.
And then, what advice would you give to any people going through rehabilitation? Or
Best advice I can give people is don't even try it. Don't even give in to the peer pressure. But if you find yourself where you do and you are addicted, you need to get help. You need to turn to your family. And if you're embarrassed and don't want to turn to your family, every community has confidential programs that you can get into. Everybody has cell phones. Get online, find a program, and get help immediately. It's only going to lead to more problems in your life.
Ever since the boom in trade and uses of drugs, the church has had to release official statements on their stance about these substances. Pope Francis himself has directly addressed the issue multiple times, saying no to all types of drugs.
Il flagello della droga continua ad imperversare in forme e dimensioni impressionanti, alimentato da un mercato turpe che scavalca confini nazionali e continentali. In tal modo continua a crescere il pericolo per i giovani e gli adolescenti. Di fronte a tale fenomeno sento il bisogno di manifestare il mio dolore e la mia preoccupazione. Un modo velato di arrendersi al fenomeno. Intendo ribadire quanto già detto in altre occasioni. No ad ogni tipo di droga.
Pope Francis often references, as well, a manual derived from the Office of Bishops and Pope John Paul II that states, drug use is linked to the search for pleasure. By giving priority to pleasure seeking, the drug user enters in conflict with the reality of everyday life and its obligations. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 2290 and 2291, directly states that the virtue of temperance disposes us to avoid every kind of excess, abuse of food, alcohol, tobacco, or medicine. Those incur grave guilt by drunkenness or a love of speed, endanger their own and others' safety on the road, at sea, or in the air. The use of drugs inflicts very grave damage on human health and life. Their use, except on strictly therapeutic grounds, is a grave offense. Production of and trafficking in drugs are scandalous practices. They constitute direct cooperation in evil, since they encourage people to practice gravely contrary to the moral law. So, any use of drugs, not for therapeutical reason, is a sin.
Why is using drugs a sin? We as human beings do not possess the right to harm our own bodies. Therefore, it is a sin to use drugs of any kind, including what the church refers to as soft drugs, such as nicotine or nitrous. However, in some situations, if drugs have been prescribed to you that will have a beneficial effect on the body, it is acceptable to use. This includes medicinal marijuana. Medicinal marijuana is like chemotherapy in a moral sense, in that it harms the body, but in the end, the results make the human body healthier.
We as Catholics recognize drugs as harmful to our relationship with God, just as we as humans recognize drugs as harmful to our physical health.
The impact of drug abuse and dependence can be far-reaching, affecting almost every organ in the human body. Drug use can weaken the immune system and increase susceptibility to infections. It can cause cardiovascular conditions ranging from abnormal heart rate to heart attacks. Injected drugs can also lead to collapsed veins and infections of the blood vessel and heart valves. Drugs can cause nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain. It can cause the liver to have to work harder, possibly causing significant damage or liver failure. It can cause seizures, strokes, and widespread brain damage that can impact all aspects of daily life. Those are just some of the effects that drugs have on our body as they spread throughout it. But what happens when drugs start to spread through America?
This is Cincinnati, Ohio. It's considered to be the heroin capital of the United States. Just in the week of July 10th through 16th, 2017, there was 18 deaths, 180 overdoses, more than 200 heroin users in jail, and 15 babies born with heroin-related disabilities. What is truly devastating about this statistic is that most major cities, including Chicago and New York, are not far behind. The heroin epidemic is truly changing the culture of America as we know it.
What is so scary about drugs spreading across America is that they are present in our hometown.
So, can you tell us a little bit about how drugs have impacted your life?
Sure. I started doing drugs in my early 20s, and it impacted my life. It made me think just about myself. I didn't care about other people. It led me down a bad road. I was lucky enough to meet a girl that was able to get me off of them. If I didn't meet her, I don't know where I would have ended up.
What can we do about it?
There are three courses of action.
Prevention, suppression, and rehabilitation.
Prevention can be brought about by offering to potential victims of drugs the human values of love and life. Illuminated by faith, the Pope has stated, in this way we can give meaning to our lives.
Fighting against the international network of drug traffickers by means to suppress the situation is important. While it would be a mistake to leave unpunished ordinary drug users, authorities should take into account the personal and social factors that led them into addiction.
The Pontifical Council for Healthcare Workers notes that the Church has been successfully treating drug addicts for years. John Paul II has encouraged parents of young addicts to keep up hope and to maintain dialogue with their children. Family love is a potent weapon in fighting drug use, he says.